For most of human history, hell wasn't just a threat. It was a language, a way people tried to explain why suffering happens, why mistakes repeat, and why certain behaviors lead us into places we don't want to be. When Dante wrote his vision of hell 700 years ago, he wasn't describing a real location. He was drawing a map of human nature, a map we still follow today, often without noticing. So in this video, we're going to explore hell not as a supernatural prison, but as a metaphor for the patterns, choices, and consequences that shape our lives. From Dante's 9 circles to the hidden psychological and social hells of the modern world, we'll look at why these ideas endure and what they reveal about us. Because maybe hell is not somewhere we go. Maybe it's something we create and something we can avoid if we understand it. When people talk about hell, they usually imagine fire demons and eternal punishment. But what if hell was never really about that? What if hell was actually a map, not of the afterlife, but of human behavior? A way to understand why people make bad choices, why societies fall into chaos, and why certain patterns of suffering repeat across history. 700 years ago, a poet named Dante Alighieri wrote a story about traveling through hell. It wasn't meant to scare people. It wasn't even meant to be taken literally. It was meant to explain something deeper, the psychology of wrongdoing and the consequences that follow. And strangely enough, his description of hell still feels accurate today, even in an era of science, rationality, and modern life. Because Dante wasn't just writing about sin. He was writing about us. So today, we're going to explore the levels of hell, not as a religious warning, but as a guide to human nature, from Dante's medieval imagination to the metaphors we use today to describe personal suffering, social dysfunction, and the traps we fall into without realizing it. Let's start with a simple but unsettling idea. Hell isn't a place. Hell is a pattern. To understand what that means, we need to look at why Dante's Inferno was so influential in the first place. He created a structure of 9 layers each, representing a different kind of moral failure. But he didn't choose these layers randomly. Each one represents a deeper form of losing control of impulses, desires, truth, or responsibility. And the deeper you go, the more the punishment mirrors the behavior itself. Dante was making a point people create their own hell long before they get to the afterlife. So let's take that journey, not to scare ourselves, but to understand the patterns he described and how they show up today in our psychology, our relationships, and our society. The first layer is limbo. This isn't a place of pain, but of emptiness. Dante describes it as a world of people who did nothing wrong, but also nothing meaningful. It's the hell of wasted potential. The modern version is the feeling of drifting through life without direction, stuck in routines that lead nowhere. Limbo isn't a punishment for evil. It's the quiet ache of a life unlived. Next is lust. Dante didn't condemn desire itself. He condemned being ruled by it. Lust is the inability to control impulses, not just sexual, but emotional and psychological. Today, this looks more like addiction to instant gratification, constant dopamine chasing, or that urge to seek validation at any cost. Lust isn't about pleasure. It's about being controlled by something you think you control. The third layer is gluttony. In Dante's world, it meant overeating. But the deeper meaning is excess without purpose. Consuming more than you need not because it fulfills you, but because it distracts you. In a modern context, gluttony looks like binge scrolling, binge shopping, or binge anything that leaves you feeling empty afterward. It's the cycle of craving more, but becoming less. Then comes greed. This isn't just wanting wealth. It's believing ownership defines your worth. It's the obsession with accumulating things' status or resources far beyond what you need. Greed today might be corporate exploitation, the endless accumulation of wealth, or simply the mindset that enough never actually exists. It's the illusion that having more makes you more. The fifth layer is wrath-anger that spills beyond control. Dante saw wrath as a force that blinds judgment and corrodes humanity. Today, we see it everywhere online: outrage, harassment, cancel mobs, road rage, and the kind of emotional explosions that leave destruction behind them. Wrath isn't just anger, it's anger that becomes identity. The sixth layer is heresy. In Dante's time, this meant rejecting religious truth. But the deeper meaning is rejecting reality for the sake of ego, holding on to beliefs not because they're true, but because they're comfortable. Today, this looks like conspiracy thinking, misinformation, denialism, and the refusal to accept evidence even when it's right in front of you. Heresy isn't about religion. It's about choosing fantasy over truth. The seventh layer is violence. Dante divides it into three kinds: violence against others, violence against self, and violence against the natural world. Modern equivalents are sadly familiar: harmful relationships, self-sabotage, emotional self-destruction, environmental destruction. Violence isn't always physical. Sometimes it's the quiet erosion of what keeps us human. The eighth layer is fraud. This is manipulation, deception, and betrayal through intelligence. Fraud is dangerous because it weaponizes trust. Today, this could be scams, emotional manipulation, social engineering, fake personas, or any tactic that twists truth to control others. Fraud is the use of intelligence without morality. And then there's the ninth layer, treachery, the deepest, coldest part of hell. Not because it burns, but because it freezes. Treachery is betrayal of the things that should never be betrayed: family loyalty, love, trust, community. In modern life, treachery takes many forms: corrupt leadership, broken promises, exploitation, or personal betrayals that shatter relationships. Treachery is the point where someone stops seeing others as human. So why did Dante create this structure? What was he really trying to say? The twist is that Dante didn't think hell was about punishment. He thought hell was about logic. Each punishment mirrors the behavior that caused it. Those who lived in chaos experience chaos. Those driven by impulse are tossed by wind. Those who betrayed trust are frozen in isolation. In Dante's view, behavior creates consequences, and those consequences become the hell we inhabit. Modern psychology actually agrees. Cycles of suffering often come from patterns we repeat: addiction rage, self-deception, toxic relationships, avoidance, self-harm. They're not punishments from outside. They're patterns from within. So how does hell translate into modern metaphors? Think of psychological hell burnout, anxiety spirals, depression loops, emotional traps. These aren't mystical punishments. They're cycles we fall into when we ignore needs, boundaries, and warning signs. Think of social hell bureaucratic systems that trap people, corporate environments that drain them, digital spaces filled with hostility, economic structures that feel impossible to escape. These are real lived experiences. Not supernatural, but just as powerful. Think of emotional hell guilt. You can't escape patterns you know are harmful, but keep repeating relationships that feel like prisons. If Dante were alive today, he might say, hell is repetition without learning. A loop you can't break. A pattern you can't escape. A truth you don't want to face. And that brings us to the final insight. Dante didn't write about hell to frighten people. He wrote about hell as a mirror, a way for people to see what happens when they stop questioning themselves, when they follow impulses blindly, or when they disconnect from responsibility, compassion, and truth. Hell wasn't meant to be a prophecy. It was meant to be a warning, not of where you might go after you die, but of where your habits, beliefs, and choices can take you while you're still alive. Whether hell exists or not doesn't matter. What matters is recognizing the versions of hell we create for ourselves, for others, and for the world around us. Because in the end, Dante's message is simple. You don't need to fear demons. You just need to pay attention to the patterns you're living in. And if hell is a pattern, then so is getting out of it. If Dante's work teaches us anything, it's that hell isn't defined by fire or demons. It's defined by the choices we repeat, the truths we ignore, and the patterns we refuse to break. The 9 circles are just symbols. but the behaviors they represent are very real. We see them in ourselves, in our relationships, in our institutions, and across society. And that's why Dante's map still matters. Not as a warning about the afterlife, but as a guide for the present. A reminder that the boundary between growth and self-destruction is thinner than we think. And that escaping our personal or social hells begins with recognizing how we got there. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this explanation and want more deep, clear breakdowns of complex ideas, feel free to subscribe. And as always, stay curious and stay aware of the patterns you follow.